Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lonnie Sheldon with Learn Law for All, and today we have Dr. Kolette Butler, and I guess Juris Doctor also. We're not allowed to, attorneys aren't allowed to call ourselves doctors to stop the confusion, but she is a PsyD and a JD, so she's a doctor. Kolette, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So a little bit about Colette's background, and today we're going to be talking about TI work. That's therapeutic intervention stuff. But her background is that she does have her Juris Doctor, she does have her PsyD, and she works with families and couples, individuals with trauma, teens and adults with emotional issues, self-esteem, depression, suicidality. I never can say that word right. And she has done training in EMDR, which again, I talked to you before. I think we really want to do something on EMDR and the DBT, especially in co-parenting, because that would be so helpful for so many, probably so many like me too, you know, anyone who's just sort of stuck in their way of thinking sometimes. So Dr. Butler is committed to the growth of her clients and really helping the community, the legal community, also the mental health community. And her forensic expertise includes psychological evaluations and interventions for the court. So again, welcome. As a disclaimer, watching these videos does not create an attorney-client privilege with me or a doctor-patient relationship or attorney-client privilege with Kolette. This is for information and entertainment purposes only. So take from it what you will, but thank you again for being here. So
yeah.
Kolette, I have so many questions for you. I have so many questions for you, and I know we're not going to get to all of them today. But I do want to ask, let's start out with just something simple. What is a TI? What's the therapeutic interventionist?
So in Arizona, a therapeutic interventionist is a court-appointed role, typically where there is resist-refuse dynamics happening between a child and a parent. The court will appoint a therapeutic interventionist to come in and facilitate reunification. In other jurisdictions, it's often called a reunification specialist.
Okay, so why do we need this? Why do people need a TI? What kind of person would need a TI?
So often what happens is a parent will bring a petition in front of the court to have the court enforce parenting time, typically because a child has been resisting, or perhaps the parent believes the other parent has been keeping a child from them. And so they'll move for the court to enforce their parenting time. And often in that setting, the parent who has kind of primary physical custody of the child might allege, like, well, this will cause major anxiety for the child if we do this, like they need some support. And so then the judge will kind of bring in a therapeutic interventionist to help ease or facilitate that reconnection or beginning the parenting time, just kind of help. And sometimes there's a specific incident that led to the resist refuse. And so a therapeutic interventionist can oversee kind of an apology and reparation of that specific incident that might have driven a wedge in between a parent and child.
That's interesting. So is it like family therapy? Is it like a therapy for the parents and the child together?
It is not family therapy. And that is probably the number one thing that parents say to me is, you know, they really thought the TI process was going to be family therapy, or they really thought it was going to give this child and the other parent a chance to heal their relationship. And it really is not that. It is a judicial process. And your TI is essentially an arm of the court. They're in a quasi-judicial role as your TI, and they are really just following the marching orders that were outlined by the court. So it is not a warm and fuzzy process. It is much more a legal process.
Okay, and that's interesting, because it is hard for people to sort of, I think, comprehend that it's not just going to be a warm and fuzzy thing, right? And are you typically ordered by the court to do it, or can people come to you, or even if you're not doing it, can people come to a therapeutic interventionist without court intervention?
So for the role of a therapeutic interventionist, that is court appointed. A family can come outside of the court process to work on resist refuse. And, I've recently had some families approach me outside of the court process who know that there are some resist refuse dynamics, but they also know, like, they've done the court thing, they've done the TI thing, they've done the PC, and they're tired of it and they don't want to do it. And they know that the litigation can really exacerbate the conflict in their family. And so they have come to me outside of the court process to try to work on reunification or increasing their co-parenting ability just on their own. And the progress that I've seen with those families has been much smoother, much faster than when I work in a court-appointed role. So if you can get your co-parent on board and you can seek family therapy, I really recommend that.
Yeah, I know it. Look, as a divorced person, I know it's hard. It would take an awful lot for me to want to go to family therapy with my ex-husband. I mean, it's like, how many times do I have to divorce them? And I know I'm not alone in that thought. But I think you got to do it for your kids, right? This is about the kids, and this is not about you as a parent. This is about what's in the best interest of the kids. And sometimes you got to suck it up, right?
Yeah.
So let's also talk about, like, how do you sort of, how do you reconcile, sending a child with a parent that the child is adamant, maybe that they don't want to go with that or that parent, or if that parent has some, we're going to call it parenting style deficits, I think is the word that you would use. How do you say go?
Yeah, so sometimes a therapeutic interventionist or reunification specialist becomes involved when one parent is asserting that there are parental fitness issues at play, and maybe there were allegations of abuse or something like that. And so, as a TI, I'm also a human being. I'm also a psychologist who cares a lot about kids. And it's this idea of, well, how do we require a child to go spend time with a parent who may be really harsh in their parenting style? Maybe it doesn't rise to the level of involving child welfare services, but that parent is really unpolished in the way that they interact with their child, or they're really harsh. And so a way that I think about it is a couple of things. Number one, if you know that your co-parent has parenting skill deficits, the kindest thing that you can do for your child is help your child behave in a way that is going to reduce the distress of your co-parent. And I know that may sound really backwards, but like, think about it, like, you're sending your child over to another person's home who has a hard time managing themselves, and they may take it out on the child. Well, then helping that child learn how to clear off the table, how to put their dishes in the dishwasher, helping them learn how to manage their voice and the volume of their voice, or learning how to manage their behavior or how to regulate. All of those things, A, are going to be beneficial to your child, but B, are going to help reduce the stress of your co-parent, and that ultimately reduces the pressure on your child, right? So I know
But
it
is that like I'm
horribly
going to,
unfair.
I know,
Yeah.
I have to butt in here, because it's almost like, I remember somebody told me a terrible joke one time, and it was a guy I had gone out with, and I never went out with him again because it was a terrible joke. He's like, why did the woman have two black eyes? Because she didn't listen the first time, and it's right. So it's almost like that to me. It's like you're almost putting the victim, making the victim have the duty to protect themselves. On the other hand, I also see it as, I know I'm probably gonna get flack for this too. When we talk about women who are dressing a certain way and they're getting hit on, and you're like, she should be able to dress however she wants, or she should be able to walk wherever she wants at night at 3 a.m, half dressed. Yeah, she should be able to, but the situation is such that she can't. Right. And so I think that's sort of what you're saying. Yeah, the kid shouldn't be afraid of a parent, but the situation is such that the kid has to go to the parents right now. And let's teach the kid to be, to stress out the other parent as little as possible. Is that sort of?
Yes.
There?
Yeah. It really, if parents can resist getting caught up in this idea of whose fault is it, and focus more on how do I do what will help my child the most? Because the research is so robust around kids in high conflict divorce situations. They are at maximum risk for mental health disorders, for eating disorders, for substance abuse, for promiscuity, right? Like, these kids are some of the highest risk kids in the world. This isn't just a problem in the United States, in the world, right? And so it's about, okay, regardless of the kind of parent that my co-parent is, how do I help my kid have the best possible experience over there? And sometimes that means behaving in a way that will not stress out the co-parent. Another way that I frame it is, it is an important developmental task for kids to learn how to self-regulate, how to regulate their own emotions, how to soothe themselves when they are in distress, right? And it is not actually good parenting, in my opinion, to stunt your child's growth by protecting them from any situation that stresses them out. And I know I'm speaking really broadly there, but it is about, okay, nobody wants their kid to be stressed out or, have emotional distress caused by a family member. And sometimes that is what happens in families, right? And so then it's like, how do we help this child onboard the skills that they will need to stand up and advocate for themselves in a skillful way, to soothe themselves when things are not going well, to regulate their own emotions, right? Because all of those things are going to be really important developmental tasks when they are confronting a teacher that they disagree with, or a boss that they disagree with, or down the road, their own romantic partner. Like, how do they manage themselves in the face of someone else behaving unskillfully? And you can help your child learn that. I maybe want to pause there because I have the urge to kind of go off on another tangent, but let me just pause there.
Well, I appreciate that so much. And I think maybe we should have another podcast or even a CLE on, and it might be past the scope of a CLE and really just helping parents. But I sure would have loved someone to come in and say, here's a bunch of tips on how you can help your kids handle difficult situations. Mm-hmm. And instead I sent them to counseling, which I think they got some really great tips and they learned a lot of really great things. But, not everyone can afford counseling, and, it'd be really great to sort of get some of those tips, like what could help my child learn to handle, events that they're not really happy about, or actions that they're not really happy about, or behaviors that they're not really happy about. I think that it's, I agree 100%. I think we need to train our kids better so that they don't have to, have a mental breakdown or anxiety because of, they don't know how to handle something. And I don't know if that's why we have so much anxiety in this world right now. I know I sheltered the crap out of my kids you try, right? And I'm
Sure.
probably wrongfully. I think we just try and we try and shelter them and help them have happy lives. And when they've got a difficult thing, you just want to jump in there and help.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe we can have a whole podcast on some tips on,
Yeah.
how to give your kids tools.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is probably widely needed. One other kind of myth that often parents will enter into the TI process with is an idea that if their child really clings to them or is in a lot of distress when they're separated from them, it's because the bond between them and their child is so robust. And there is actually some data that refutes that, or at least some literature that refutes that idea. In fact, the more secure a child is in their relationship with you, the more willing they are to go take risks, or in other words, enter into anxiety-provoking situations, because they know they've got a safe place to come back to. If you've got a child who has a really hard time leaving your side, they may feel some uncertainty about their connection with you or their relationship with you, or they may be picking up on your anxieties. And again, like, I'm not saying that this is true across the board, but it is something to consider, because a lot of parents will come in essentially saying, like, we're so close. Look, my child, doesn't even want to leave my side. Well, that actually can be indicative of a problem rather than a reflection of the quality of relationship you have.
Yeah, and I know in divorce, one time my kids asked me, they're like, well, what do you do when we're gone? As if I was sitting home pouting and whining all day while they were gone. I'm like, I go see grown-up movies that you guys wouldn't like. I go meet my friends for happy hour or dinner, or I go hiking on weekends. I go out of, I might go out of town for a week. Where do you go? And I think when I gave them that information, I think it was helpful. Like, I'm not sitting home pining over you. I love you very much, but I know you have a good, safe place to go. And you'll be fine over there, and your dad's gotcha. And so I get to do grown-up things during this, my 5 days off or my weekend or whatever. So it's kind of interesting. So same kind of theory, I think, is when you got to let them also believe that you don't rely on them for your happiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also don't rely on them for your happiness.
Yeah. Well, not just don't let them think that, but also don't do it.
Yeah, right. So, and it may sound like we're kind of off target here, but all of these are issues that come out in the TI process. I've heard all of these things in the context of the TI process, and so if you have a little bit of an idea about some of these before you get into the TI process, or if you're an attorney watching this, even bringing some of this up with your client, like, these are different ways to look at a problem or a challenge. And it's really about, how do we help kids be resilient and face anxieties? Even if that anxiety is spending time with a family member, how do we teach them how to stand up for themselves in a way that they respect, right? Kids are very much in that process of standing up to peers or disagreeing with teachers or different things like that. And how can they do that without being really unkind, or without, disappearing and not saying anything? And this can be a space where they're learning those skills too.
Yeah, who knows? I might have to cut out some of my other stuff, because I know I went on my little rant that probably had nothing to do with TI work, but I might have to do some editing. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And just for everyone, just so that you know, we did just record a CLE that will be available, or that should be available, I guess, now by the time you're watching this. So thank you again for that. And if anyone needs to reach out to either of us, our information will be listed in the description part of our podcast.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you very much, Kolette.